first glimpse of the ring as worn by William's mother, Princess Diana.
I would love to have met her, and she's obviously she's an inspirational woman to look up to, and very inspirational. So yeah, I do.
Royal tensions exploded after Camilla's daughter stunned the public by appearing in none other than Princess Diana's iconic jewels, pieces many believed should belong to Kate Middleton alone. The moment the photos surfaced, shockwaves tore through the monarchy, igniting whispers of disrespect, rivalry, and a brewing power struggle. But Kate didn't stay silent. Her calculated, elegant response sent a clear message that has everyone talking. So, was this a bold challenge to her future role? Or the start of a royal showdown? What sparked this glittering clash inside the palace? The discovery that shattered the palace's silence. There was no shouting, no accusations, only Catherine's cold, unmoving stare and the heavy silence William carried beside her. The story begins with a loss that left no fingerprints, a quiet disappearance wrapped in shadows. And at the center of that shadow stood Camilla, drifting boldly into a space she was never meant to fill. But legacies are stubborn. They never remain buried. They speak, through careful scans, through forgotten papers, and sometimes through the unguarded honesty of a child. On one side stood Catherine, a daughter-in-law who had never met Princess Diana, but understood the weight of memory and the duty of protecting it. On the other stood a woman once pushed away from the royal spotlight, now stepping too deeply into a history she had no right to touch. When justice does not shout and truth carries no weapon, Catherine knew loyalty would have to be her shield. On June 18, 2025, warm afternoon light spilled through the tall stained glass windows of the Heron Wing Archive, a hidden room inside Kensington Palace. The air smelled of aged oak and beeswax, clinging to the ornate boxes that protected Diana's treasured belongings. Each chest held more than jewelry. It held pieces of a life that was still lived in millions of hearts. Catherine stood quietly among them. Dressed in a modest gray wool gown, her hair tied back, she wore no jewels and no makeup, only a steady seriousness. This was her first private inspection of the year, a responsibility she insisted on carrying out herself. For her, this was not routine. It was a promise to the woman she would never meet. She held a dark green leather ledger, the official catalogue of every sealed item preserved under Queen Elizabeth II's orders. After Diana's passing, the command had been absolute. Nothing was to be opened or removed until 2043, when Princess Charlotte would turn 18. At first, everything matched. Every entry aligned with every tag, until two details didn't. Catherine flipped through the pages again and again, hoping she was mistaken. She wasn't. Two priceless pieces were gone. The Spencer pearl necklace, 1981. The Qatar pearl earrings, 1986. But now that the truth has broken through the silence, whose hands will be exposed next? The theft with no fingerprints. Catherine rushed toward the designated compartments, her footsteps echoing through the stillness of the archive. Her heartbeat thrummed in her ears as she lifted the lids of the boxes that should have held the priceless pieces, empty. Not disturbed. Empty. No dust, no fingerprints, no hint that anything had ever rested inside them. She examined every inch carefully. The locks were pristine, untouched by tools or tampering. The palace's advanced security, motion sensors, heat detectors, biometric scanners showed no warnings, no glitches, no late-night disturbances. No one had logged an entry. No one had authorized a removal. And yet, the jewels were gone, erased as if they had slipped through time itself. A cold breath swept over her skin. This wasn't about stolen gems. This was about lineage, memory, and the fragile threads that connected Diana to her granddaughter. Losing them felt like losing Diana all over again. Heat flared in Catherine's chest, but she forced herself into composure. She couldn't act out of grief. She had to think like a guardian of history. Hands trembling, she pulled out her phone and called William. It rang twice before he answered. Voice gentle but alert. "Kate? What happened?" Her words came out tight, uneven. "William, you need to come to the Heron Wing. Your mother's necklace and earrings. They're gone." Silence thickened through the line. When he finally spoke, his tone was steady, but edged with a pain only she could recognize. "I'm coming. Don't tell anyone. We'll handle this ourselves." When the call ended, Catherine stood alone in the dim chamber as long shadows stretched across the marble floor. She clutched the ledger close, feeling the weight of a mystery far heavier than missing jewels. Someone had taken Diana's legacy and done it with impossible precision. Hours later, deep inside Kensington Palace, the warm glow of the day had been replaced by harsh white light from security monitors. The air was tense, heavy, almost brittle. Catherine sat at the long table, hands clasped, her posture controlled, but her eyes sharp with worry. Across from her, William leaned against the wall, sleeves rolled up, gaze fixed on the cascading lines of data. He looked steady, ready, but she knew the truth. This wound wasn't new. It was old and aching. "Run a full sweep," he ordered quietly. "Every log, every camera, every clearance. Nothing stays unchecked." As the room buzzed with silent urgency, Catherine studied the faces around her, wondering if one of them already knew more than they dared to say. Who could breach a fortress without ever entering it? And what else might they be planning next? The name that broke the silence. Despite every member of the royal security team being carefully vetted, Catherine knew one painful truth. Loyalty inside the palace could be as fragile as glass one wrong word, one quiet compromise, and even decades of service could vanish. She glanced at William. Their eyes met for a single moment. No words were needed. Both understood. This wasn't just a case of theft. This was betrayal, deep and deliberate. Nearly an hour into the investigation, the head of security, a stern, silver-haired man with steel-rimmed glasses, lifted his eyes from the streaming data. "Your Highness," he said cautiously, "we've detected something your gupso. Irredigchupso." William straightened, pressing his palms against the polished table. "What kind of irregularity?" The technician enlarged a segment of the access logs. "On April 9th, 2025, he said, there was an entry into the Heron Wing archives. The system recorded the visitor as Queen Camilla." A shiver ran through Catherine. The name felt like ice in her veins. She turned toward William, noticing the tightening of his jaw, the shadow darkening his gaze. "Reason for access?" he asked softly. The technician hesitated, then opened another file. The record listed the visit as an inspection of artifacts for a proposed exhibition. But there was no supporting paperwork. Camilla had no accompanying staff. The biometric security system, designed to prevent even senior royals from bypassing it, had been deliberately disabled. Catherine's brow furrowed. Only someone with the highest level of clearance could override it. Only one person, Camilla. William remained silent, eyes locked on the glowing screen. For a fleeting second, Catherine saw not anger, but profound sorrow. Camilla wasn't just the queen consort. She was the woman he had struggled to accept, tied to the grief of his mother's absence. Catherine felt a storm rise within her. Camilla was cunning, unshakable, and ruthless enough to claim power. If she orchestrated this, it was more than audacity. It was a war. Catherine stepped to William's side, resting her hand on his shoulder. "We'll uncover the truth," she said steadily, "no matter what it takes." He squeezed her hand, voice firm but quiet. "For my mother, and for Charlotte." The door closed behind them, the palace calm outside. Yet in its shadowed corridors, one presence lingered. Camilla's name no longer sounded like a title, it sounded like a warning. If Camilla truly crossed this line, will Catherine and William uncover the truth before the palace itself is changed forever? A pearl in the spotlight. On the evening of June 20th, 2025, Buckingham Palace gleamed under the soft radiance of crystal chandeliers, their light scattering across gilded walls and polished marble floors. The Grand Hall was filled with diplomats, humanitarians, and global dignitaries, all gathered to honor 40 years since Princess Diana's historic landmine campaign began. The air buzzed with admiration, tempered by a quiet sorrow, as though Diana's presence lingered in every whispered recollection, every gentle smile. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood beside William in a flowing sapphire silk gown that mirrored the legendary hue of Diana's engagement ring. Her smile was poised, her posture flawless, yet her eyes betrayed a restless vigilance. 2 days had passed since the shocking theft from the Heron Wing, and the weight of secrecy pressed on them both. Camilla's name lingered in Catherine's mind like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. William, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit, moved gracefully among the guests, exchanging pleasantries and handshakes. But Catherine saw through his calm exterior. Every glance they shared across the crowd carried unspoken messages. The truth remained hidden, and patience was crucial until they gathered irrefutable evidence. Nearby, young Prince George clutched a glass of apple juice, his fair hair catching the chandelier light. Curious and bright, he had inherited Diana's fascination with the grandmother he had never met, through photos, stories, and bedtime tales that kept her spirit alive. Then, a soft tug at her sleeve. George's voice rang clear and innocent. "Mom, why is Laura wearing Grandma's earrings?" Time seemed to freeze. Catherine's pulse thundered in her chest. Across the hall stood Laura Lopi, Camilla's stepdaughter, in a black evening gown. On her ears gleamed the Qatar pearl earrings from 1986, the very pair missing from the Heron Wing. Conversations faltered. The room seemed to hold its breath. Catherine crouched, resting a trembling hand on George's shoulder. "George," she murmured, her voice steady but trembling. "What did you just say?" William's hand pressed firmly to her back as his gaze hardened. "Kate," he whispered, resolute, "we can't ignore this. Not now." Could this startling revelation finally expose the truth behind the missing royal treasures? Or is it only the beginning of a far deeper palace intrigue? A royal confrontation. Every instinct screamed for confrontation, but Catherine knew one wrong move could ignite a scandal capable of consuming them all. George, Charlotte, and Louis had to remain shielded from the storm about to break. Yet, the moment had already slipped beyond their control. With a steadying breath, Catherine lifted her chin, her gaze locking on Laura. Her voice was calm, precise, and sharp, cutting through the charged silence. "Laura," she said evenly, "could you tell me where you got those earrings?" The question landed like a silent blade. Laura's hand trembled as it brushed the pearls. I was told they came from an auction," she stammered. "My mother gave them to me." A chill slithered up Catherine's spine. Camilla's name rose again in her mind, heavy and inescapable. She met William's eyes, sharing a silent understanding. The truth behind the Heron Wing theft no longer hid behind speculation or spreadsheets. It gleamed now unavoidably beneath Buckingham Palace's glittering chandeliers. The grand ballroom, once filled with conversation and clinking glasses, had fallen into an almost suffocating silence. Diplomats, dignitaries, and courtiers watched as the confrontation unfolded. The air was taut, electric, like the calm before a storm. Catherine's fingers ached where they clutched her lace. Her heart thundered, yet her composure betrayed nothing. Laura, pale and hesitant, brushed the pearls as though their weight alone could expose her guilt. William's jaw tightened, his voice low but commanding. "Fetch Mr. Harrison," he said, signaling the palace's senior heritage appraiser, a man whose expertise had served the crown for decades. Within 30 minutes, Mr. Harrison arrived, silver-haired and composed, carrying his case of micro-etching scanners. The guests instinctively parted, as though the ballroom had transformed into a courtroom. Catherine stepped forward, voice firm yet controlled. "Laura, please allow Mr. Harrison to examine them. It is necessary." Laura hesitated, lips trembling, but one look from William silenced her. She unfastened the earrings and handed them over. The room fell utterly silent, the faint hum of the scanner and the clicking of buttons the only sounds. Seconds stretched. Then the device's display revealed its verdict. Could this moment finally unmask the truth behind the stolen royal treasures, or is it only the first step into a deeper web of palace intrigue? The confrontation at Buckingham. Catherine unmasks the Queen. The match was undeniable. The micro-etched serial code aligned perfectly with the heron wing records. These were, without question, Princess Diana's missing Qatar pearl earrings. A collective gasp swept across the hall, rippling like a sudden gust of wind through the glittering crowd. Catherine felt the room tilt for a heartbeat, but forced herself to remain composed, eyes fixed on Laura. "You said your mother gave them to you," she said evenly. "Could you explain how she acquired them?" Laura's hands trembled as they brushed the pearls. I was told they came from an auction," she stammered. "My mother gave them to me. I didn't know they belonged to Princess Diana. I promise, I didn't know." All eyes shifted to Queen Camilla. Regal in a deep crimson gown, she stepped forward, her usual confidence faltering. Her voice wavered as she tried to regain control. "This is a terrible misunderstanding," she declared. "I had no idea they were Diana's. I bought them through a reputable dealer and gifted them to Laura, nothing more." Catherine felt the heat of restrained fury rise but held it in. A public confrontation could cause irreparable damage. She leaned close to William, voice low. "We need to move this somewhere private. Not here. Not in front of everyone." William nodded, eyes never leaving Camilla's. "Mr. Harrison," he said sharply, "return the earrings to the heron wing. Secure them immediately. No one touches them until further notice." Turning to the crowd, he continued with the quiet authority of a future king. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the interruption. The gala will continue, but this matter must be handled privately. Thank you for your understanding." The audience obeyed with polite nods, though whispers rippled like a quiet storm. Laura slipped away, tears streaming, leaving Camilla isolated beneath the intense scrutiny of 100 curious eyes. As the heavy doors closed behind them, Catherine exhaled slowly, feeling the immense weight of the moment. The stolen earrings had resurfaced, but the battle was far from over. In the glittering halls of Buckingham Palace, a queen had been publicly unmasked. Catherine understood then. What had begun as a theft had escalated into open warfare within the royal family. Public sentiment was already turning and the stakes had never been higher. But with the truth exposed, how far will Camilla go to reclaim control? And what will Catherine do next? Royal Showdown: Secrets, Lies, and a Stolen Legacy. Each post online widened the rift between the Queen and the public. Within Clarence House, even Camilla's closest aides began to hesitate. A few quietly requested transfers to Kensington Palace, seeking distance from the Stormont Young staffer, visibly shaken after attending a private strategy meeting, confided to a colleague before handing in her resignation. "I can't be part of this. It's not about image anymore, it's about destroying a family." Camilla felt the walls of her world closing in. Late that night, she summoned her advisors again, but the atmosphere was icy, her authority fragile. Even her most loyal aides avoided her gaze. Finally, a senior strategist, his voice deep and measured, broke the silence. "Your Majesty," he said cautiously, "we can control the press, but if the prince and princess uncover stronger evidence, this could become irreversible. Camilla's patience snapped. She slammed her palm on the table, the echo filling the room. "I don't need reminders who they are," she thundered. "I've endured worse. I will not be destroyed." Her words lingered, heavy and tense, as she turned toward the window. Outside, London's lights glimmered like distant embers, and for the first time, a flicker of fear crept into her chest. The gala disaster wasn't mere embarrassment. It was a warning. Beneath the crown she had fought so long to wear, Camilla sensed her control beginning to tremble. On June 24, 2025, a private chamber deep within Buckingham Palace became the stage for a historic confrontation. Portraits of past monarchs seemed to watch silently as William, Catherine, and Camilla faced each other across a panel of 6 senior advisors and legal counsel. William, in charcoal suit, palms pressed against the oak table, radiated icy composure, defending his mother's memory and his daughter's inheritance. Catherine, in a tailored navy dress, exuded calm strength, eyes alight with controlled fury. Camilla, draped in crimson, tried to maintain poise, fingers digging into the table's edge as the tension thickened. Breaking the silence, William's low, razor-sharp voice cut through the room. "This is no longer private. It is theft. You entered Heron Wing, bypassed security, and removed artifacts belonging to my mother, sealed for Charlotte." Camilla's chin lifted, defiant yet brittle. "I am the Queen," she snapped. "I have the right to review the family's holdings. You accuse me without proof." Catherine's voice followed, quiet but firm. "No accusation is needed, Your Majesty. Palace logs show you alone entered the archive on April 9th. The biometric system was disabled, and soon after, the earrings appeared on your daughter's ears." Camilla shot to her feet, fury and fear entwined. Glasses trembled as she slammed her hands down. "I didn't take them," she cried, voice cracking. "I bought them at auction. I didn't know they belonged to Diana." Now that the theft is revealed, how far will Camilla go to protect herself? And can Catherine safeguard Diana's legacy? Royal authority challenged. The suspension of Camilla's access. An older advisor cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the tense silence. His calm, deliberate tone only made the room feel heavier, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. "Your Majesty," he began carefully, "our investigation has found no record of any auction involving the Qatar pearl earrings. The micro-engraved identification codes match Princess Diana's original registry perfectly. This cannot be dismissed as a mistake or oversight." Camilla's eyes blazed as she whirled toward him. Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "How dare you question me? I have devoted my entire life to this family, while you all cling to the memory of a woman long gone." Her words hung like venom in the air. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, the tension almost tangible. William's jaw tightened, his expression hardening into a mask of steel. When he spoke, it was barely above a whisper, yet every word landed like a sword. "You speak of my mother like that," he said steadily. "You took what was hers, what belongs to my daughter, and you call it a mistake." Catherine placed a firm hand on his arm, steadying him, her own presence a silent anchor. She turned to Camilla, her voice calm but resolute. "Power is not the right to rewrite the past," she said. "Charlotte deserves the legacy intended for her, not one corrupted by greed or deception." Camilla's mouth opened, but no words came. Her eyes flicked around the table, desperate for support, but every gaze deliberately avoided hers. Finally, one of the council members, a seasoned barrister known for her composed demeanor, spoke. "Your Majesty," she said, "based on the evidence before us, the Council recommends that your access to the Royal Archives be temporarily suspended until the investigation concludes." Camilla's defiance faltered. Her breath came unevenly, replaced by a hollow, weary desperation. "You may strip my authority," she rasped, "but you will never erase me." William rose slowly, his height casting a long shadow across the polished table. "We do not intend to erase you," he said, voice steady and unwavering. "We intend only to protect my mother's legacy and ensure you never touch it again." As Camilla strode toward the door, the echo of her heels reverberated through the chamber like fading thunder. When the door finally closed behind her, silence reclaimed the room. William reached for Catherine's hand beneath the table. They both knew this was a victory, but only the first move in a war far from over. With Camilla barred from the archives, can the monarchy truly heal? Or is this only the beginning of a deeper family battle? A legacy secured, Catherine's vow to protect Diana's heirlooms. No public statement would be made. No press release would announce the change. Camilla's exile would unfold quietly, almost like a velvet curtain drawn in the dead of night, leaving the world none the wiser. When her sleek black car rolled away from Clarence House, the streets of London pulsed with life. Evening crowds laughed beneath the golden glow of lamplights. Cars honked, taxis weaved through traffic, and pedestrians hurried along pavements, all unaware that the tide of power had shifted inside the monarchy's walls. Within Buckingham and Kensington, however, the murmurs had already begun. Some staff exhaled in relief, as if a long-held tension had finally lifted. Others exchanged cautious glances, uncertain how far this new order would reach. Camilla remained queen in name, but her throne had grown cold, distant, and hollow. Her authority had been stripped, her influence erased, leaving only the illusion of control. On July 1st, 2025, pale summer sunlight spilled across the new archive at Kensington Palace, a fortress disguised as a room. Unlike the ornate heron wing, this archive was built for precision, strength, and unyielding security. Reinforced steel walls encased the space. Biometric locks demanded retinal and facial scans. Cameras monitored every corner, leaving no shadow unobserved. At its center stood Catherine, both architect and guardian. This was more than an archive. It was a vow to Diana, to Charlotte, and to the quiet voice in her heart demanding truth and protection. Gloved hands carefully placed two sacred relics into bulletproof glass: Diana's sapphire engagement ring, deep and luminous, and her delicate wedding bracelet, a chain that had shimmered the day she became Princess of Wales. Each bore microscopic codes, marking them untouchable, impossible to move without leaving a trace. Only two people would ever open this archive: Catherine and the guardian appointed for Charlotte when she reached 18 in 2043. Her fingers brushed the sapphire, and a surge of tenderness and sorrow filled her eyes. Though she had never met Diana, she felt her presence through William's stories, fragile letters, and fading photographs. A woman at once luminous and vulnerable. "I'll keep my promise," Catherine whispered, as if Diana stood beside her. "Charlotte will inherit what is rightfully hers." Footsteps approached. William entered clad in deep blue that mirrored the sapphire's hue. He studied the relics, then turned to her with quiet admiration. "You've done it, Kate," he said. "My mother would have been thankful." Catherine smiled faintly. "We did it," she murmured. "For Charlotte, for your mother, for everything she stood for." William produced the Preservation of Bloodline Heirlooms Act. Now finalized, only Diana's biological descendants could claim her treasures. Camilla and her line were removed entirely. William signed decisively, sealing his mother's legacy beyond reach. With Diana's treasures finally safeguarded, can anyone still challenge Catherine's guardianship, or is the monarchy's future now firmly in her hands? Catherine secures Diana's legacy amid royal turmoil. The crimson light of sunset bathed Buckingham Palace, gilding its domes and spires in molten gold. Yet inside a modest office, high above the courtyard, the air was sharp and cold. William sat behind an aged oak desk, the faint scent of waxed wood and parchment lingering. Before him lay a freshly drafted decree, the black ink crisp on the white page, the royal seal declaring solemn authority. By the window, Catherine stood with quiet grace, her gaze fixed on the gardens below. Her hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white, yet her silence was not fear. It was resolve together. They had endured sleepless nights, faced hard truths, and confronted a challenge that would echo through the monarchy for years. Camilla's fury during the council meeting lingered in William's mind, sharp and desperate, yet it had failed to conceal the evidence or shake the advisor's conviction. William picked up the pen, hand steady, the nib scratched decisively across the page. The words were formal, precise, and merciless. All of Queen Camilla's privileges over royal heritage were rescinded. She was barred from representing the crown in any events tied to Diana. Her authority within the Royal Planning Council suspended pending review. Each sentence severed decades of ambition and influence. At Clarence House, the consequences arrived swiftly. A nervous aide presented a sealed envelope. Camilla broke the wax seal, her eyes scanning each word. Revocation of clearance, suspension of duties, and an order to withdraw from public life. The grandeur surrounding her mocked her now. The power she had claimed so fiercely had vanished. Outside, London thrummed with normal life. Oblivious, Camilla remained queen in title, yet she was exiled within her own reign. Meanwhile, Catherine, hailed as the guardian of Diana's legacy, often walked Kensington's gardens with Charlotte. The little girl clutched a daisy, dreaming aloud, while Catherine's calm smile reflected a vow kept. One day, Charlotte would inherit not jewels, but endurance, love, and her grandmother's enduring spirit. Under the crimson dusk, the palace glowed, not as a monument of marble, but of remembrance, where Diana's light lived on, safeguarded by William and Catherine. So, what's your take on this intense royal saga? A story of Diana's legacy, loyalty, and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments, like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.